So lots of people are talking about a new drama which is called Hoard, which is out in cinemas this weekend. We've just seen it. Chris is here. My name is Phil. We are Boys on Film. Welcome. If you're new, please do subscribe. So this is written and directed by a 26-year-old filmmaker called Luna Carmoon. It won 3 prizes at last year's Venice Film Festival. It stars Saura Lightfoot Leon, Hayley Squires, who we both love, Joseph Quinn from Stranger Things is in it as well, Lily-Beau Leach, and Samantha Spiro again. I love her. She's in so many things that I've enjoyed. So quite consistently good cast, I think, there. The story follows Maria, who is a teenager whose mother, who is Hayley Squires in the first part of the film, used to be a hoarder, sorting through bins, collecting rubbish. It starts in 1984 and then about 20 minutes, half an hour moves on to the 90s. So we see Maria as an older teenager who is affected, I think, by her past in quite a lot of ways. Quite an interesting film. That we were talking about this earlier, and we both have different views, I think, on this film.
Yeah, I mean, look, I really love the premise of this film, that, you know, there's a young girl living with her mother. They're not necessarily living like a lot of us live, and it's a pretty unconventional life, but what you're absolutely being presented with is really loving relationship. You know, the mother absolutely loves her daughter. She might be going about it the wrong way in some way. She may be doing things that we wouldn't want to live like, but they live in this world of love, you know, and slightly as a consequence of their unconventional lifestyle, the girl's subject to a bit of bullying, and there's a little bit of kind of unhappiness for her as a consequence. But, you know, her mum's always at pains to remind her that, you know, they live in a world of love. And that's really beautifully kind of communicated. Tragedy strikes, and, you know, things change quite a lot, and that's why there's the time jump. You know, we're then looking back, you know, we're trying to sort of piece together kind of what happened, and the circumstances of their lives sort of afterwards are obviously quite different, and that they're having to live in a more conventional way, but equally, you know, they're having to deal with a lot of kind of hardship and sort of people, you know, questioning them and being stuck in a system, you know, and it's uncomfortable to watch, you know. It's kind of difficult, you know. It's you develop, because of the way that their relationship's depicted in that first half an hour at the beginning, you develop a sort of fondness for them, you know, for the two characters, for the daughter and the mother, and you know, the way it turns out isn't great. Other people join the party and kind of start coming into her life, and making it difficult, basically, and making it a challenge, and that's uncomfortable too. And you just want it to catch a break. You know, it's pretty relentless in terms of that mood, I think. Not that it's bleak particularly.
No, well, I was just going to say that because I think there is a lot of magic in there, because I think it's very clever what they do. They hark back to the past, or she remembers things from the past which are quite magical to her. Like, there's a scene where Hayley Squires, the mother, is playing with her under covers, and you know, they're in bed, and she's kind of, it's almost like this dream world. You know, when you're a kid and you have, like, you build tents and stuff. It's that kind of thing. So she remembers that, but there's also a lot of things from her past that she finds really traumatic. So I think there is magic in there, and I think there is beauty in there as well as all this dark stuff. So I think it's quite a good balance. I mean, perhaps there's more traumatic stuff than there is magic. It's fair to say, I think, probably.
It is one of those films that relies on its light and its shade. You know, if it was relentlessly a bad news story all the way through without the magic and without the relief, that would have been quite a different film. And you're right that there are moments of literal magic in it. I mean, there's something magical and childlike about elements of the young girl's life that she then uses as sources of comfort to her traumatic, her sort of post-traumatic adult life. You know, she remembers some of that magic and some of those special things, and it's what keeps her going, you know, basically, because she's living with that dreadful past.
I think it's the washing, isn't it? She sees the washing flapping on the washing line, which reminds her of being under the covers with her mum, and that whole kind of sensual thing. I think this is quite a visceral film. It's quite a film that you almost could smell in a way, because there's a lot of stuff which, I mean, we'll come on to that later. I'll tell you about what happened when they were making the film, which is quite grim, but obviously there is a reason for that. So yeah, I think there is trauma, magic and madness. I think that's what I read in one of the interviews or something that the filmmaker was talking about. So I think it does balance it, but it's certainly not a light film. I think it is a film that not everybody's going to enjoy as well. which
No, I mean, it's not.
could be accurate.
It's definitely not unrelentingly bleak. I think that's really important to say. It's not. It's not, and it's also not Ken Loach. You don't just watch it going, "Oh God, this is like trauma porn." It's not like that at all, because of the elements of kind of childlike magic and stuff that happen in it, and the relief that happens. But yeah, I mean, look. It's a shame. What the sort of non-fairy tale aspect for me about it is that when the young girl's older, you kind of she could have just recovered from the whole thing and just moved on and had a wonderfully successful life. But actually, she's still hindered by the ghosts of the past, but also the people that come into her life later on, and continues to sort of be messed up by some of those encounters, and can only really hang on to the past that she had, the special bits of the past she had with her mother. But you need that relief is tangible. There's relief in the film. It's not just a one trick. Everything's just pure misery.
No, I was just going to say that because I think the relief comes from Samantha Spiro, who's the foster mum. Obviously, the second part of the film is set in the 90s. Samantha Spiro's character is really uplifting, really positive, and she loves her foster kids. I mean, they live in a home which is a happy home, but obviously there's a lot going on eventually because all that PTSD stuff comes through after a while. And it's the previous resident, isn't it, Micheal, who Maria bonds with, and Micheal is really infatuated with her, and there's a point where he says to her, "Why won't you love me? I love you, and you don't seem to give that love back." But there's a lot of repressed feelings that do eventually surface, and we get to see that. And also, it's no hold bars as well. I mean, the filmmaker does go to extremes in telling that story and being really honest with that story, which I think is a really good thing, because it's a very strange film, but it's a compelling film, I think, because there are definitely disturbing elements, but the brightness is important.
Absolutely, the lightness is really important, but I think that one of its successes is that it's kind of relatable, and I'm not saying that my life was like this in any way, but we read in the news about people who've had difficult starts in life and this kind of stuff, and there's something utterly believable about it. And for me, I really engaged with them as characters at the beginning, and I think that was a very deliberate effect of this film, that you engage with them and you start to feel for them in a way that you and I talk about other characters, other films, where you never get that level of engagement. You never get to sort of relate to the characters. In this, you do, and you kind of stick with them. And there's a real tenseness that goes throughout this film, because you just think, what's going to happen next? Again, I keep saying it's unrelenting. Somehow it's unrelenting, and you're always, it's not unrelenting, but you're always wondering what's going to happen next.
It's bubbling under. That ominous stuff is bubbling. I mean, because we see a lot of really dark stuff. I mean, when Maria's young, when she's a kid, she sees a flasher that exposes himself, and then as she gets older, she's kind of going through, self-harming with the iron, and we see Micheal being involved in that as well. So, and also when she's a kid, there's that whole spitting on the sweets thing, which I suppose a lot of kids have done. They've done stuff like that, and I think it's, like you say, relatable for a lot of people, but it's quite triggering.
It's A, relatable, and B, because we got to know them, and because if something happens that you can sort of see beyond. It's interesting you say about the smell thing, because I was able to kind of see beyond where they lived and see that, but the mother's intentions, however kind of messed up by whatever standards you've got, are based in love. It's about raising her daughter in this condition of love. So all of that means that all of these slightly strange things that happen, like spitting on sweets and blah, 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 that become very anchored behaviours, because they remind the girl of being young. I was able to kind of not be going, ooh, at those things, and kind of, I was able to kind of just go, okay, look, I get why she's doing it, I get why that she's getting comfort from these things. And that's a very successful, that for me, I think the performances in this were incredible. I think it's really great performances, really engaging, really getting the characters. And I think that I've got to thank that for not kind of going ooh when people spit on each other or whatever, because you just don't see that. You see people.
I wasn't repulsed by that either, but I think there may be viewers that would be a bit grossed out by that, but there's obviously a reason for it. And also, that's a really interesting point that you made, because Micheal, the foster mum, who's played by Samantha Spiro, she totally understands why Maria is going through these problems. She doesn't initially, because she doesn't understand, she doesn't know the backstory necessarily. Obviously, she's a foster mum, so she gets it to a certain extent. But there is a scene where it's a really touching scene, actually, where she's hugging her, surrounded by bin liners and stuff that's been hoarded. And she says to her, she kisses her, and she says, I understand it. And it's touching because it's that connection thing, which I found really moving. But going on to the smells, though, which I mentioned earlier, one of Luna Carmoon's tricks apparently was to spritz the set with fragrance, because she'd read somewhere that Elizabeth Taylor had a certain scent for each shoot that she was involved in, each film that she's made. So she wanted to do the same. And obviously, to fit in with the mood of the film and the story, she sprayed sweat, saliva, blood and sperm on the set. But the actors knew nothing about it. So the actors, when they were filming, said, oh, that smell is back, because she'd done it at the beginning, but then she didn't do it in the 90s periods filming. So obviously, as that story moves on, she eventually reintroduced that smell back into the set.
Well, it's funny that you should say that Liz Taylor does this, because I also don't do any of these interview chats that we do without a scent being near me as well. Because
What's your scent today, then?
Today's scent is actually brought to you by Dove Men, because they happens to be here. I went to Boots earlier and I bought that, ready for the filming, so that I could be in the zone. My zone is Dove Men.
I thought you were going to be a Lush queen. I was proved wrong. No. I love it. I think that's probably a nicer scent, maybe, than what Luna Carmoon was using.
I think it probably is. And so I've got to say, I like to, as people who watch these things will have realised, I like to pick out a couple of things to talk about at much more length than they're worth about these films. Two things really leapt out at me. There's a really beautiful piece of cinematography at one point where the young girl's sitting at the bottom of the stairs by the front door of the house, and she's playing with a letterbox. And there's this really beautiful shot. See, you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, she puts a hand through.
And you get this beautiful, she's inside the house, trapped by her life and all that kind of stuff, and in the kind of misery, and she opens the letterbox and she's kind of playing with it in this idle, childlike way, and this kind of shaft of light comes through and it just illuminates across her eyes, I think. And it's a really beautiful, it's a very obvious little thing to do, I suppose, the outside world and the light of the outside world coming in to touch her, and it's just a really beautiful shot. I really enjoyed that.
I've got goosebumps just thinking about that, because I thought that was really well done. And there are a couple of other touches very similar that does convey that magic that obviously she's going through. And I think it's kind of similar with Dancer in the Dark. Have you seen the Björk film Dancer in the Dark, which Lars von Trier did? That goes into musical moments, which so the lead character, Björk's character, is escaping trauma by going into these imaginary musical moments, and it reminded me of that a little bit, those moments.
Yes. There's definitely something post-traumatic about it, and and her finding her way to deal with her trauma, I think, is a really powerful. That's what makes it's what makes her a strong character, and what makes it a sort of strong film is that she finds her own ways to deal with this trauma. She retreats to these places of magic and escape, and that's powerful. We're seeing that.
I think it was filmed in Bromley, your neck of the woods.
I live in a much nicer part of town than that, obviously. I didn't know that it was filmed around here. That's very interesting.
Well, I think the filmmaker's from Lewisham. I think it may be either Lewisham or Bromley, but I did see one of the roads where they showed the road sign, and I looked it up and it said Bromley, and it said in the press notes that it was filmed in southeast London, so I'm guessing it was either Bromley or Lewisham. I know they're not close, really. But.
Trivia fan.
Boring trivia, maybe.
My second piece of little note is the music in it and the sort of soundscapes are kind of fairly unobtrusive, and just there's not a lot of it. But then you start to get this little bit of Everything But the Girl coming in towards the end, Missing, which was obviously big in the 90s, around the time that it was set, and it's kind of it's a very emotive piece of music anyway, the original version, not the Todd Terry house mix. And, it's really emotive anyway, because it's about longing and missing people. And the way that gets threaded in a little bit at the end is actually highly successful as well. I think that was a really clever use.
It's interesting you mentioned the music as well, because I thought there was a tonal shift at the end. And I don't know if... Because I'm thinking, oh, it did feel a little bit out of place, but then it was quite nice to have that tonal shift. But I don't know if it suited the rest of the film. So that's my only issue, although I'm happy to go with it because I understand why it's there. Because it's the end of the film.
This theme of her finding escape and retreat in things, for me, maybe it just resonated with me because music has always been an escape for me. But I think that I read in it the fact that she was out in the world. The young girl goes out in the world, and that's where this music is starting to. She's not listening to it, but it's the soundtrack. And for me, there was a little bit of being out in the outside world and allowing yourself to feel longing for the past and all that kind of stuff, and to miss it. And
I get that.
I felt it was quite a clever device, actually.
Yeah, I understand that. It was meant to be Christmas as well, and it was very sunny. It looked like summer. Also, another little minor gripe. Very minor gripe.
I just want to point out to you, the sun always shines in Bromley.
Well, I used to live in Bromley. It never shone for me when I was there. Well, actually, I tell a lie. I did enjoy it there. And Beckenham.
Good. So
just little nitpicking, because I think I'm going to give it a slightly higher rating than you, maybe. Might be wrong.
You? Are you asking me? Are you asking?
I'm asking. Are you rating?
Just talked over it. I'm going to go 3.
So, yeah, I'm going higher.
Oh.
I thought it was really powerful, and I liked the way the film told the story. I thought it was clever using those little magical moments, and I don't think it was totally disturbing and traumatic, even though I think that's an essential part of it. I think they needed to make it traumatic because it's a traumatic story for Maria. But I thought it was a really original piece of filmmaking.
I don't disagree with you. However, I just felt it was a bit rambly. And I hate to, that's a very simple word, for such a well-made film. But it could have been pruned. It could have been a bit more economic. It could have been a bit trimmer. There were a lot of things that got spelt out to us that I thought we didn't need spelling out to us. I just, it's like when you watch these films, you get to the end and you think, oh, that was 2 hours long. If it had been 90 minutes, it would have been a lot better.
It was 2 hours. Yeah. I never looked at my watch, but I was aware that it was quite a long film.
I've got to say, it did not keep my attention. I enjoyed lots of elements of this film, and talking about it now, it sounds like I'm being immensely sort of, positive about it, but actually at the time, as a viewing experience, it was not, it didn't keep my attention for the whole 2 hours. I was wandering.
That's interesting. I thought it was an intense film. I don't think, like I said earlier, I don't think it's going to be everyone's cup of tea, but it's definitely my cup of tea, and I'm interested to see what Luna Carmoon is going to do next, because she's 26, and I think there's definitely a talent. I think she did say in an interview that her next film is apparently an anti-man manifesto, which I'm all here for.
We definitely look forward to that. I think, yeah, look, incredible to have made a film this good when you're 26. That was a long time ago for me, and there's no way I could have made a film this good when I was 26. Mm-hmm. Maybe she's a real one to watch. Maybe one day she will be like the best British filmmaker we've ever had. That there is that potential there. It isn't perfect, this film. There's a lot I could tell you I didn't enjoy about it, but it has a lot that is really good about it, for sure.
So it's called Hoard. It's out in cinemas this weekend, May the 17th. Let us know if you're going to see it. Leave a comment down below. Tell us whether you enjoyed it, if it was your cup of tea. Tell us a star rating as well, maybe. Give us a star rating. Let us know what you thought of it, and hopefully we'll get you to subscribe. Check out our other recent video on the screen right now above our heads, floating somewhere. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, Chris.